Some sorrows never make a sound. They quietly pass through the lives of our parents and grandparents, persistent, invisible, and rarely called by name. They don't speak of it. They don't demand. They don't blame. But in their eyes, their voice, their slowing steps, we know something is gently slipping away. Is it possible that with age, people don't just grow physically weaker? They also become more emotionally fragile. There are 12 emotions that often linger silently in the hearts of the elderly, and yet we seldom notice them. And perhaps it is our neglect of these small hidden feelings that is slowly widening the gap between generations. Are you truly with the elders in your family, or just around them? Support the channel by subscribing. It means a lot. 1. The feeling of being left behind. The feeling of being left behind doesn't arrive all at once. It slips quietly into the day, in every accidental glance, every forgotten promise, every interrupted conversation. Elderly people often spend much of their time simply waiting for a phone call, a warm check-in, the sound of familiar footsteps returning home. But the older they get, the longer the waiting stretches, the quieter it becomes, and the more it fills with disappointment. They may live in a house full of children and grandchildren, and still feel as though they're standing outside the door. The conversations around them no longer need their opinions. Family activities no longer place them at the center. Important decisions, big or small, no longer seek their voice. Their presence seems to fade with the years, and when they no longer feel needed, they begin to wonder if they're still loved. Sometimes they don't complain, they don't say anything at all, but their eyes look farther into the distance. Their voice slows down, and each day passes like a quiet step away from the circle of family. The feeling of being left behind doesn't always come from physical absence. It also comes from being slowly forgotten, even while still sitting right there. They are still present, still smiling, still offering blessings, but deep inside, there is a cold emptiness that no polite question can fill unless it comes from true care. The pain of aging is not in being unloved, but in being unremembered. The fear of becoming a burden, it doesn't begin with a word. It begins with a pause, a hesitation before asking for help. Say a quiet glance towards someone younger, wondering if asking for something small like a glass of water or a ride to the doctor might be too much. For many older adults, the fear of becoming a burden is not spoken out loud. It shows in their restraint. It hides in their silence. It wraps itself around every little request, making even the simplest needs feel like a weight they are placing on someone else's shoulders. They begin to calculate, not just the steps they take, but the impact of their presence. They question, am I interrupting their lives? Am I slowing them down? Would they be better off without me needing so much? What used to be everyday tasks, walking, remembering, opening jars, driving to the store, slowly turn into things they can no longer do on their own. And every time they ask for assistance, a tiny voice inside whispers, "You're taking up space. You're in the way. You're no longer useful." That voice doesn't always come from outside. Often it's born from pride, from decades of being independent, of providing, of being the one others leaned on. Now needing help feels like a betrayal of their former selves, and so they shrink, not in body, but in spirit. You might notice it in their words. "I'll manage. Don't worry about me. I don't want to trouble you. You're busy. I'll figure it out." But the truth is they are worried, not about themselves, but about becoming too much for the people they love. This fear can be more painful than physical aches. It sits heavy in the chest and lighter in the step because they try not to. Ask for more than they must. Sometimes they even hide pain. Delay doctor visits. Push through discomfort, because asking means admitting they need, and needing feels like burdening. This fear shapes how they live each day. They begin to speak less, move less, expect less, yet deep down, they still hope, quietly, that someone will notice, that someone will say, "You're not a burden, you're loved," not out of duty, not out of pity, but because that love is real and still needed. The loneliness inside one's own home loneliness is not always loud. Sometimes it sounds like the faint ticking of a clock in a quiet room. It echoes through the hallway when everyone has left for work or school. It lingers in the clinking of a spoon against an empty cup of tea, with no one sitting across the table. For older adults, loneliness often arrives not with distance, but in the middle of closeness. It is entirely possible, and painfully common, to feel alone even when living with family, to be surrounded by voices yet never truly heard, to be in the same space but never truly seen. The home, once filled with conversations, footsteps and laughter, slowly transforms. Children grow. Grandchildren become busy. Routines change. Life moves faster than they can keep up with, and though the walls are familiar, the rhythm is no longer theirs. There are entire days when no one looks them in the eye long enough to ask, "How are you really doing?" Not because people don't care, but because life pulls everyone in too many directions at once, and so they nod. They smile. They say they're fine, but in their room at the edge of their bed they sit longer. Not because they're tired, but because there is no one waiting, no one calling, no one needing them. Not anymore. This kind of loneliness doesn't always scream for help. It simply sinks in. It arrives in the moments when the house is full but the heart is empty, when they pass through the kitchen unnoticed, when family dinners are filled with screens, noise and distractions. But no space for their voice. There are memories in every corner, photos on the walls, dishes they used to cook, but now they are more like gentle ghosts than parts of the present. The feeling of being needed, of being an active part of the home, begins to fade. And that is what hurts the most, not being alone, but being invisible in the place they once called theirs. The silence they carry is not just around them, it grows inside them, a quiet ache, not of missing others, but of being missed by no one. Losing confidence in one's body there was a time when every movement felt natural. The body responded like a loyal companion, strong, steady, predictable. But as the years pass, something begins to change, slowly, quietly, and then, all at once. One day, the steps become smaller. The balance feels just slightly off. Hands that once held steady now tremble without warning. And so begins a new, unfamiliar chapter, where the body is no longer a source of confidence but of caution. For many older adults, this shift is not just physical, it is deeply emotional. It touches their sense of self-worth, their independence, their dignity. There's a quiet fear in every movement. Will I fall again? Can I trust my legs today? Will they notice my hands shaking when I pour the tea? These are not just passing thoughts. They shape every decision, whether to go out or stay home, whether to speak up or stay silent, whether to ask for help or struggle alone. Even the most basic tasks, dressing, bathing, walking to the mailbox, become small battlegrounds between pride and vulnerability. Each stumble feels like a betrayal from within. Each moment of slowness feels like a reminder. You're not who you used to be. What once was done without thinking now requires planning, patience, and sometimes permission. Permission to rest, permission to let go of certain roles, permission to accept that the body is changing and that it's okay. But accepting this isn't easy. It comes with grief. Grief for the version of oneself that felt capable and strong. Grief for the body that once carried children, built homes, danced at weddings, and never asked for help. And in that grief there is often shame, not because they've done something wrong, but because the world around them still expects energy, speed, agility, things that aging quietly steals. It's not the wrinkles or the grey hair that trouble them most. It's the feeling of uncertainty, of waking up and wondering, will my body cooperate today? They begin to move more carefully, speak more softly, stay more still. Not because they've given up, but because every day they are trying to build a new kind of trust with a body that now walks beside them more slowly, like an old friend who sometimes forgets the way. 5. Haunted by memories, time leaves traces, not just in the body but in the mind. And as the world around them moves forward, many older adults find themselves walking backward, deeper into memory. Some memories are soft, filled with laughter, warm embraces, voices of loved ones who have long since gone. They return like old friends, unexpected yet welcome. But others are heavier, sharper, louder. They do not knock before entering. They appear suddenly, in the silence of the afternoon, in the smell of an old sweater, in the echo of a familiar song. These are the memories that haunt, not always because they are traumatic, but because they are unresolved. Words that were never spoken, goodbyes that were never said, moments that slipped by too quickly, and now cannot be changed. As the pace of life slows, the mind has more space to wander, and it often wanders into the past, to mistakes, to regrets, to people they miss more with each passing day. Some memories come wrapped in guilt. I wish I had been more patient with my father. I shouldn't have said that to her before she died. I should have taken more chances when I was younger. These thoughts don't fade. They linger, quietly replaying like an old film that won't stop looping. For many, the hardest part is having no one to share these memories with. Their peers, the people who were there who remembered too, may be gone, and the younger ones, kind as they may be, simply don't understand the weight of a 50-year-old silence. So the memories stay inside, some polished from retelling, others untouched, buried under layers of pride, pain, or simple forgetfulness. But every so often, one slips through, and for a moment their eyes cloud, their voice trembles. They look not at you but through you into a room that once existed, with people only they can still see. And in that moment, they are not just old, they are young again, grieving again, longing again, because memory is not just a record of what has passed, it is a living presence that walks beside them, some days as comfort, other days as shadow. Feeling useless or no longer needed, there is a kind of silence that grows not from peace but from no longer being asked, no longer being sought out, no longer being needed. For many older adults, this is one of the most painful shifts, the quiet but steady erosion of purpose. They spent decades building families, careers, communities. They solved problems, gave advice, cooked meals, mended what was broken. They were the ones others turned to, depended on, listened to. Their presence mattered, but now something has changed. People make decisions without them. They speak about what's best for them, but rarely with them. Tasks that once gave their days meaning are slowly taken over by others, not out of disrespect but efficiency. And so, little by little, the hands that once held so much are now left resting in their lap. The voice that once gave comfort or wisdom grows quieter because no one is asking questions anymore. They don't say it out loud, but inside, they begin to wonder, what am I still here for? If I don't help anyone, what do I become? If no one asks for me, who am I now? It's not about wanting to control. It's not even about staying busy. It's about being meaningful, about knowing that their presence still shapes something, even something small. The absence of need feels like erasure, like a room slowly being emptied of furniture, until one day they sit there surrounded by memories of usefulness, wondering where it all went. Even well-meaning phrases can deepen the ache. Don't worry, we've got it. You just rest. You've done enough. Yes, they have done enough, but that doesn't mean they want to stop being enough. To feel useful is to feel alive, to feel like your heartbeat still matters, your experience still carries weight, your hands still belong somewhere in the world. Without that, the days grow duller, the hours longer. The sense of self begins to fade, not from age but from absence. The absence of contribution, of relevance, of belonging. What they long for is simple, to still be part of the thread that holds the fabric of family and life together, not as a memory, not as a symbol, but as a living, breathing presence with something left to give. Feeling ignored or dismissed. When speaking, there is a quiet kind of pain that doesn't leave bruises. It comes from speakings and not being heard, from offering a thought and watching it fall, unnoticed, into the space between conversations, from feeling your words drift past people's ears as if they were nothing more than background noise. For many older adults, this is a daily ache. They speak slower now, perhaps with more pauses. Their stories may take a little longer to tell. Their thoughts may wander, loop back, or take detours, but what they say still carries meaning, woven from a life of experience, memory, and emotion. And yet too often, they are cut off mid-sentence. Corrected before they finish, smiled at politely, but not truly listened to. Sometimes it's subtle, a quick glance at the phone while they speak. Other times it's overt, a flat reply or a change of subject, as if their voice carried no weight. They may not show it outwardly. They may keep talking or nod quietly and stop. But inside something shrinks. The message is loud even when unspoken. What you say doesn't matter anymore. You're not part of this world's conversation. You've had your time. Now stay. Quiet. And so they begin to withhold their words, not because they have nothing to say, but because they've learned their words often fall into silence. This is not just about being heard. It's about being valued, being respected, being acknowledged, as someone who still has something to offer. They remember a time when people leaned in to listen, when their advice was sought, when their opinions shaped the room. Now they are sometimes spoken about instead of to. Their views are labeled old-fashioned. Before even being heard, their emotions are explained away. She's just lonely. He's getting forgetful. Don't mind her, she's just stuck in the past. But they are not stuck, they are rooted. And from those roots come stories, truths, and wisdom the world still needs. If only someone would sit down, slow, down and truly listen. Because to listen is not just to hear, it is to say you matter. Your presence is still relevant here. We see you. 8. The pain of watching others rush through life. They sit by the window or in the same armchair each morning. The light shifts slowly across the floor. The kettle whistles. A bird lands briefly on the fence. And all around them, life rushes. The Ikais. Chora slams as someone leaves for work. The hallway fills with quick footsteps and forgotten keys. Phones ring. Notifications chime. Voices rise and fall in hurried tones. I'm late. Can we talk later? I don't have time right now. For the elderly, this new tempo of the world feels not just fast, it feels far away, like a train passing by that never stops at their station anymore. They remember a time when meals were slow, conversations unhurried, and people looked each other in the eye. Now faces are turned toward screens, dinners happen in minutes, questions are answered while multitasking. They are not angry, just quietly aching. Because it's not that they want others to slow down for them, it's that the speed of everything makes them feel left behind, invisible in the blur of modern urgency. They try to speak, but their words arrive slower than the moment allows. By the time they finish a thought, the room has already moved on, and so they stop trying. Not because they have nothing to say, but because no one seems to have time to listen in full. There's a loneliness in this kind of silence. Not the silence of solitude, but the silence of being overlooked by a world that's always running. They see their children stressed, their grandchildren overstimulated, everyone stretched thin, and they want to say, breathe, pause, be here. But they don't. Instead, they smile, they nod, they wait, and they wonder if anyone else notices that something precious is slipping away. Not just time, but presence. What hurts most is not the slowness of their own body, but the speed of everyone else's life. So fast that there's no space left for stillness, no pause long enough for them to rejoin the moment. And yet, they are still here, alive, feeling, watching, hoping maybe that someone will slow down long enough to sit beside them, even for 5 quiet minutes, and remember that life is not only about moving forward, but about holding on to what truly matters. 9. Grief. That others have forgotten. Grief changes shape over time. In the beginning it is loud, filled with tears, embraces, rituals, and shared mourning. People call, they visit, they remember with you. But as the days pass, the world moves on, and what once was spoken about every morning becomes something people hesitate to bring up. Not out of cruelty, but out of discomfort, or forgetfulness, or the quiet assumption that you must be better by now. But grief, real grief, does not disappear, especially not the kind carried by those who have lived long enough to bury the ones they once raised, grew up with, or built a life beside. For many older adults, grief becomes a private companion, not because they want it to be, but because everyone else has already closed that chapter while they are still living in its last line. They sit in rooms filled with echoes. Photographs become both comfort and ache. A name slips into a sentence, and no one responds, and so they fall silent again. Their grief isn't just about missing someone, it's about being the only one left who still remembers them, the only one who knows the sound of their laugh, the weight of their silence, the exact way they used to hold a pen or fold a shirt. It's the kind of loss that gets harder to explain as time goes on. The world says life goes on. But for them, life has gone on. It just went on without someone they can't stop holding on to. And when they do mention the past, a name, a place, a date, they're sometimes met with polite nods or quiet discomfort. Because for others, it's just a story. For them, it's a wound. The hardest part is not the sadness. It's the loneliness inside the sadness. The isolation of grieving someone the world no longer grieves. The quiet injustice of feeling like you must hide your sorrow because it's been long. Enough. But grief does not follow the calendar. It does not obey the clock. It sleeps beside them, walks with them, sits at their table in the silence. And what they long for, more than consolation, is remembrance. For someone to say their name aloud again, to ask, what were they like? To listen, to care. Because grief doesn't need to be solved, it needs to be seen. And for the elderly who carried decades of love turned into loss, that recognition, that simple act of honoring who was, can be the gentlest, most sacred form of healing. 10. The fear of being a burden at the end of life. There are few fears as quiet and as heavy as this one. Not of death itself, but of the path that may lead there, of needing too much, of asking too often, of becoming someone else's weight. Older adults carry this fear, not always with words, but with gestures. Apologies for needing help with the stairs, embarrassed smiles. When they forget a name, quiet refusals. Don't worry about me. I'll be fine. You've done enough already. Because somewhere deep inside, they've begun to believe that the more they need, the less they'll be loved. It's not true, of course, but it feels true in a world that praises independence, speed, and self-reliance, where asking for help can feel like an admission of failure. They watch their children juggle work, parenting, and life's endless demands, and they think, I don't want to add to that. They see their caregivers, tired, stressed, trying their best, and they silently decide, I'll keep this pain to myself. So they hide it. The dizziness, the confusion, the sadness. They endure in silence, not out of strength, but out of love. A love that doesn't want to inconvenience anyone. What they don't always realize is that love they feel, the desire to protect those around them, is the same love others feel toward them. And yet the fear remains. Because as the body weakens and the days slow down, they begin to wonder, what am I offering now? What do I give if all I do is take? This fear touches their dignity, their identity, their worth. They worry about the money being spent on their care, the time it takes to bring them to appointments, the meals made just for them, the repeated questions, the forgotten things. All of it begins to weigh on their heart, not because of what it costs them, but because of what they believe it may cost others. Even the thought of needing help with the most personal tasks, bathing, dressing, eating, feels unbearable to some, not because they are ashamed of their body, but because they fear becoming someone else's responsibility. And yet, in their quietest moments, they too long to be held, to be reassured, to be told not just, it's okay, but you are not a burden, you are loved, always. Because at the end of life, what matters most is not how much someone needed others, but how deeply they were allowed to be human, without shame, without fear, without having to earn the right to belong. Loneliness. Even in the presence of others. All loneliness lives in empty houses. Some of it lives right there, in the middle of a busy room at a dinner table with warm food, in a home filled with voices that talk past you. This is the kind of loneliness that many older adults know all too well. It's not about being alone, it's about being unfelt, unseen, untouched by real connection. They hear the laughter in the hallway. They watch the grandchildren scroll through bright screens, faces lit by a world they no longer understand. They sit on the edge of conversations, offering smiles, nods, polite words, and yet feel as though they are fading into the background. No one means to leave them out, but life is fast, and attention is thin. Questions are shallow. Time is short. The deeper parts of them, the ones still full of memory, music, story, and pain, remain untouched. They crave more than company. They crave communion, that sacred space where one person truly meets another, where listening is deep, and words matter, and silence is shared without awkwardness. But so often what they are given instead is surface, quick check-ins, conversations about medications, not memories, reminders to eat, but not invitations to dream. It is a strange ache to be surrounded by people you love and still feel like you are speaking through glass. They do not want to intrude. They do not want to ask too much. So they smile. They say, "I'm fine." And then they sit with the quiet that follows, and in that quiet they remember. The sound of long phone calls, the feeling of being needed, the joy of conversations that wandered like rivers, not rushed like schedules. They are still full of life, not the fast-burning kind, but the deep-burning kind, rich with reflection, soft with sorrow, seasoned with joy. What they long for is simple. A hand resting on theirs for more than a second. A question asked, not out of duty, but curiosity. Someone. To sit beside them, not to fix, entertain, or update, but to be with them, because presence is more than proximity, and the deepest loneliness isn't about distance, it's about the absence of being known. The silent anxiety of losing control. Bit by bit, it doesn't happen all at once. Control doesn't vanish in a single moment. It erodes, quietly, softly, like a shoreline, slowly taken by the tide. One day they stop driving at night, then not at all. Keys are handed over, or taken, and with them goes a piece of independence. Another day, they're told to rest instead of help, to sit instead of lift, to wait instead of decide. At first it seems small, a change in routine, a little more assistance, but slowly they feel it, the shift from doing to being done for, from choosing to being told. And with that shift comes a quiet fear. What else will I lose? When will my voice no longer count? What happens when I am no longer the author of my own life? It's not pride that resists the help. It's the longing to still own their life. They have spent decades deciding for themselves when to eat, where to go, how to dress, what to believe. These choices, once effortless, were the small freedoms that made up dignity. Now even simple decisions come filtered through others. What time to take pills, what food is best, what's safe or reasonable. And while those who help mean well, a son, a caregiver, a nurse, each act of assistance can carry an unintended message. You are no longer in charge. Trust us, not yourself. Let go. They begin to second-guess their instincts, to hesitate before voicing a preference, to feel the creeping fog of helplessness where once there was certainty. It's not that they resent support, it's that they fear disappearing beneath it. Because control is not just about making decisions, it's about being seen as capable, respected as a person who still knows who they are. When that perception fades, so too does something sacred, the feeling of autonomy, the quiet pride of managing oneself, the groundedness of knowing I still matter in the choices that shape my day. And yet, what they long for most is not endless control, but shared dignity, to be involved, consulted, heard, not managed but partnered with. They want to age with grace, but not with erasure, because even when the body weakens and the mind slows and the steps are shorter, there is a self still burning steady inside, a soul that does not forget who it is, and all it asks is this: let me still be me, even as I need more of you. Closing reflection, holding the invisible with tenderness. Aging is not simply a number we mark on a calendar. It is a slow unfolding of memories, of loss, of tenderness, of waiting. It is a quiet chapter where the pages turn more slowly, but are no less meaningful. We have journeyed through 12 silent burdens, each one small enough to be missed by the hurried eye, but heavy enough to press on the soul each day. The ache of feeling left behind, the worry of being a burden, the quiet retreat from conversations, the pain of watching the world speed past, the grief that lingers after others have moved on, the fear of needing too much at the end, the loneliness that can live even in crowded rooms, the slow erosion of control, and all the unspoken emotions in between. These aren't always voiced. There may be no complaints, no visible signs, but they live in the sigh between sentences, in the gaze out the window, in the way an old song brings tears before the first chorus. And perhaps that's what makes these emotions so sacred. They are carried with such quiet dignity, not demanding attention, only hoping for recognition, because what every elder truly longs for is simple: to still be seen as whole, to still be heard without needing to raise their voice, to still be held, not just physically, but emotionally, in the tender embrace of presence, patience, and love. We live in a time that worships speed, youth, and productivity, but in doing so, we risk forgetting a deeper wisdom, that there is beauty in stillness, that slowness is not weakness, it is sacred, that age is not decay, it is depth. To care for our elders is not merely a duty, it is an invitation to remember what truly matters: listening, presence, respect, love without condition. If we can pause just for a moment, to sit beside them, to ask with sincerity, to listen without rushing, we may discover something rare: that the soul does not grow old. It only softens, deepens, and waits to be met. Let us meet it fully, gently, before it is too late.